Alright, welcome back. This is episode 2 of my AP Literature educational podcast. And for this episode, we will be focusing on the Yellow Wallpaper. Now, I know last episode I went a little bit over a time limit, but this time I think it should be a little more on target, because The Handmaid's Tale was the only full-length novel that we had to read for this project. So, I do indeed have my notes with me, because we spent a lot of time in the Yellow Wallpaper, and I wouldn't be able to keep it all up here. Anyways, the Yellow Wallpaper, basic run-through, is about this woman, Jane, and her husband John. Notice the generic names, we'll come back to that. And this woman has, nervous depression, slight schizophrenic tendencies. She just has legitimate things that are wrong with her brain and with her personality. And so she is put on what was referred to as the rest cure, which was very popular back in the late 1800s. This takes place in 1892. So what the rest cure is basically you're kept in the house with whoever lives there. You're not allowed access to any sort of stimulation whatsoever. You can't usually go outside. You can't write. You can't read, you can't play games, so most of the time you end up just sleeping, or you go crazy analyzing everything that's around you because you have nothing else to do. And that is what happened to Jane. And as you might imagine, she focused on one thing in particular, the wallpaper, the yellow wallpaper of her bedroom. Now, as you might imagine, this piece of literature also has very dominant color schemes. One in particular, and that, of course, is yellow. Now, I couldn't find anything yellow to wear because, my wardrobe sucks. But orange is the closest approximation that I could find. So, let's go into that. Yellow color scheme. Now, yellow is, for those of you who follow the Green Lantern, yellow is the color of fear. But yellow is also the color of dankness, decay, rot, also associated with black sometimes, but mostly yellow, and stagnation. Definitely stagnation is going to be the big one here. And yellow starts to dominate Jane's life. It basically becomes everything. Everything is yellow. And it becomes more than just a sight to her. The yellow wallpaper becomes a sensation, something she can touch, something she can smell, and at some points even taste. And basically, because her life is so stagnant, it begins to rule her life because it represents stagnation. So that's it with the colors, and now we're going to go into some character analyzation. Let's see here. Yes. Okay, so her husband John, like most men of the time, is controlling. He's got an alpha complex. He's afraid of changes in the status quo, and to him, Jane's behavior reflects upon him. So he thinks that he has to control her so that he will appear acceptable to society. She has to do what he wants so that, he can survive in society. And that's how it was back then. That's how it was. It was very phallocentric. It would look that up. It was very patriarchic. Yeah, something like that. Actually, it kind of still is today, but we're slowly reverting to a level of Mary, who is the maid at the house they live in, Mary represents every other woman out there at that time who's been subjugated, who's given in, weak. She enforces the status quo, that kind of stuff. Now they also have a baby. They have a baby, but Jane never sees the baby, really. Jane never interacts with the baby, because the baby, for her, is a form of stimulation. The baby is a form of thought, which on the rescuer, she's not allowed to have. And the baby, more importantly, the baby is a boy. And because the baby is a boy, in a male-dominated society, the baby there then becomes more important than Jane does, and she resents that. She doesn't like the baby. And then Jane herself represents, the underdog, whatever runs against the status quo, the rebel, etc., that kind of stuff. She is sort of more the hero of the story than Offred was in The Handmaid's Tale, but still not really your stereotypical hero. Now, because Jane is stuck in the house with nothing to do but look at this wallpaper, she begins to analyze the wallpaper, and she begins to use the wallpaper. More importantly, she uses the wallpaper to write on, because she's not allowed to write. So she can only write on the wallpaper because she's not given any materials, and furthermore, she can only write when she's not with anyone, especially when she's not with John. So writing becomes her only form of freedom or outlet or creation, and creation is what is crucial, because everyone needs to create. In fact, it still happens in society today. People go through their midlife crisis, and mostly what it is empty nest syndrome. After their children have left, they lack the ability to create or provide, and their life becomes meaningless. Jane needs to create, and writing is the only way that she can create. So she starts to write on the yellow wallpaper, and she starts to write about her life. But she can only write when she's alone. And the things she writes about are craving the sensation of being outside, being with people, interacting. And so it becomes a sort of ironic paradox, and you'll see that most feminist literature makes heavy use of irony, because a lot of the situations are ironic. But it becomes a sort of paradox, because she wants interaction, and she wants freedom, and she wants the ability to create. Interaction can only be gained when she has freedom. Freedom can only be gained when she's off the rescuer. And because she can't get off the rescuer, the only thing she can do is write. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Let's see. Oh yes. And then there's also the matter of Jane representing, or beginning to represent, all women who are going through these sort of things. She begins to rebel, and she begins to slowly lash out, and she begins to realize that there's something behind that wallpaper. There's something behind that confusing pattern in there, and she realizes it's a woman. But the woman isn't just a woman. The woman represents all women who are trapped by society, and if you want to extend it further, all people who are trapped by society. So she starts slowly, and very creepily, if I may add, to become that woman, because she is trapped, and the woman starts to steal her identity, and it starts to become a role reversal situation. So what she does is she starts ripping the wallpaper off, more so than she needs to write. She just starts ripping it off in an attempt to get that woman out of there, because that woman is now in her head. That woman is her, and she is behind the wallpaper. And that's how the role reversal comes about. Now, this piece of literature is actually what inspired me to think of the theme that I've been using for all these videos. Disparity is required to create change. Now, just like in The Handmaid's Tale, all circumstances taken into account, she is in the worst position she can be in. There is nowhere else she can go. And so, she becomes desperate. And desperation is what is required to create change. Desperate times call for desperate measures. So what she does is she rips out the wallpaper on the day before they're going to leave. She rips it out while John's not there, and she stashes a rope away for herself, and she ties herself to the bed and starts crawling around the room. But it's not her anymore. It's the woman inside of the wallpaper. She is now the woman inside of the wallpaper, and the woman that was in the wallpaper is now freed and is taking control of Jane's body, and is showing the world, showing John when he gets home, just what he has forced her to do, and what proverbially men are forcing women to do all over the world at that time. She takes desperate measures. She starts crawling around the room like a demented, mad, crazy person, which at that point she is, because she has no other option. And not only is there a role reversal with the lady behind the wallpaper and Jane, but there is a role reversal with Jane and John at that point, because at that point John loses his power over her because she cannot be subjugated anymore, because, as you know, chaos and madness aren't controlled. That's the opposite of control. Before she was controlled, now she's mental. So there's a role reversal. He becomes sort of that child figure that needs to be controlled or taken care of, and he faints, and she starts crawling over him, and that sort of symbolically represents her finally escaping his influence and getting over him. Let me look at my notes here, see if there's anything I'm missing. Yes, and one last point is that, just a moment. Yes, our one last point is that by freeing the woman behind the wallpaper and becoming that woman, I believe that Jane felt that she was sacrificing herself for the greater good and making an example of herself so that one day all women could be free. She felt that the woman behind the wallpaper represented all women. So in giving herself to the wallpaper, and you must remember that this is all going on inside of her head, and by giving herself to the wallpaper, she frees everyone else. Martyrdom, that's what it's referred to as. So that's about it for the Yellow Wallpaper. Just felt that I should explain how it ties in to other feminist literature and to my theme. And you'll start to notice a recurring motif here with the feminist literature, which actually works very well with the theme I've chosen. So I will see you next time. Hope you enjoyed this one too.